Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today I'd like to continue on with a video a day wherein I talk about a film or a video or a TV series or something that in one form or another I feel has something to do with this season in which we find ourselves currently, namely the Halloween season, October 2020. And Halloween is just around the corner, so please enjoy yourselves and stay strong and stay well and stay safe during these times, as always. Over the course of this, say, series that I have been doing, I have, in essence, been speaking to you about films that have affected me, and the way that they have affected me have been usually in the form of scaring me or making me feel shocked or in awe, making me feel somewhat in suspense, the notion of a kind of a drawn out feeling of tension, and that can be derived from a number of places, such as the way that violence is depicted, gore scenes, special effects, slasher films, monster movies, also supernatural films, and also films that have a real chilling atmospheric style to them that could be described as being very classical, very much gothic, or perhaps even relying heavily on the feeling of dread, unease, the macabre, and the like. And so, and these can be TV series, these can be films, and so this has always been my approach to this particular, say, series of videos on YouTube. I don't necessarily call this particular list my all-time favorite top horror films of all time. And I am very careful also not to call all of them horror films, although I do believe in a number of things. First of all, I believe very strongly that the horror genre is a genre that I think is very artistic and very worthwhile. And so I'm very proud to be a fan of the horror genre and many subgenres within that general umbrella of the name horror. And as well as that, I believe that the idea of the horror or the horrific can be seen in many modes of cinema and artistic expression that themselves might not necessarily be described immediately as being part of the so-called horror genre or the suspense genre and the like. And so I recognize this, and I think therefore that a lot can be said about films that have this edge to them and yet might be devoted primarily to a different mode of genre entertainment altogether. And so this is my way of essentially saying that it's possible to see these connections, I think, in a myriad of places, at least from my point of view, which is what makes this particular YouTube video series very exciting for me. And also I should say that the films that I'm listing here aren't necessarily my all-time favorites, right? I'm not saying that this is my top 5 or my top ever favorite scary film of all time. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that I do have a love and affection for these films that I'm presenting in one way or another. And so with all that, I should say that whatever films that I mention here or don't mention, that's not to say that I have anything negative about any films I don't mention here. It just so happens that I only have so much time in the day to be able to talk about the films that I want to talk about. I wish I had more time to be able to talk about them. But given the limited amount of time and given the space of, say, 31 days, here is another video talking about a film. Okay, so from that perspective that I share, this is a film that I see as being one that has a real cold, atmospheric edge to it that is very shocking, very scary. In some instances, there's some scenes that are very violent and quite horrific and very theatrical and quite spectacular, thus making this film a full-fledged, cinematic, iconic classic of the highest caliber. It is a magnificent work of art that is so unnerving. It stands the test of time. It really does. It's this film from 1957. This is the film directed by Akira Kurosawa, Kurosawa Akira, a Japanese filmmaker. And this is the film in English. The title that in English it's generally known by is Throne of Blood. This is the Kurosawa adaptation, or maybe adaptation is not the appropriate word. The film takes its inspiration, let me put it that way, from the works and world of William Shakespeare. It's specifically the tragedy of Macbeth. So it takes its inspiration from Macbeth. And so we see a lot of parallels with the underlying material that is Macbeth. But there are a lot of twists along the way. And so it is not a direct adaptation of Shakespeare, but rather it is inspired in a way by Shakespeare, but is also taking place in a feudal Japan historical landscape that is fictionalized on the one hand, but also is very evocative of a historical past on the other. So it is a film set in Japan in historical past, fictionalized, having its inspirational roots with Shakespeare and Macbeth. So with that, the film is oozing with a chilling, cold atmosphere, the fog and the barren landscape and the black and white cinematography, and the way that the architecture seems to be hanging lugubrious in the air almost, and the nature of the distance and the woods, and the way that nature seems to be its own supernatural force, together with other supernatural forces, perhaps, that are existing, ghosts and specters, goblins and the like. So on those terms alone, I think this can be classified as being a heavily, heavily atmospheric film that is very much in keeping with a type of cinematic experience that leads to the viewer feeling on edge and scared, and really feeling a kind of dread due to the well-established atmosphere by Kurosawa and crew. But that's not all, of course, because we have, as I say, the underlying source of inspiration being Macbeth, and that translates into Kurosawa's cinema so perfectly in terms of the way in which the human spirit is being portrayed. In particular, the ideas and notions of greed and of ambition, and of a way in which ambition and power must be achieved, and at what costs, and to what extent are people willing to achieve such high levels of power. And combined with that, this very interesting and nuanced discussion and treatment of sexual dynamics. And this is, of course, made very clear in one of the main relationships, both in Macbeth and also in Kumo no Sujo, Throne of Blood, which is right here. And so this has, I think, a lot of visual flair that is very chilling, and also a rich, deep appreciation and exploration of a dark side of human psychology, which in combination lead to quite inexorable and very vivid and very chilling scenes and set pieces. Speaking of which, there are so many moments that will chill you to your very core. And there are moments of brilliance in the way that violence is depicted. There's an artistic sensibility in these very violent depictions that still are quite gruesome. There is, of course, a lot left to one's imagination, but there's also a lot that we see. And what we see is quite shocking indeed, especially for a film from this particular period. So we have, and Kurosawa, we know, is a filmmaker who deals with action and violence in a very heavy and very artistically respectful way. And this film is no exception to that. However, I should say also that there is a real vividness and almost an over-the-top nature to how these scenes are portrayed, which makes this film, I think, quite bordering on the truly horrific, which is part of the appeal, I dare say, of the film Throne of Blood. These are quite spectacular, over-the-top set pieces that will never leave you once you've seen them. And the kind of artistry that we have here is in many ways, and in all ways, I think, undeniable. The acting, to the music, to the cinematography, and to the very nature of the moving camera and how action is portrayed, and how certain aspects of Macbeth are either adapted faithfully or are applied in terms of a variation on a theme, a la Kurosawa. And the way the variation on a theme is applied is genius. And so there's a lot of surprise mixed in with the proceedings. So this, in turn, becomes a really almost aggressive form of brilliant entertainment that has also its roots in a mode of cinema, the world of Kurosawa, which of course is a name that is very well respected among cinema fans and critics and film historians alike, of course, due to the body of work of Kurosawa, which includes this film, Throne of Blood. And I should say also that the film Throne of Blood, this is the English title that's often associated with it, but the original Japanese title is very suggestive, and it's called Kumo no Sujo. Kumo no Sujo can be translated directly into English as Spider Web Castle. So if we think of that word and that title, Spider Web Castle, I think we can begin to realize that there are a lot of cold, supernatural, horror type of underpinnings that are at play here. As I say, ghosts, the hint of the supernatural, blood dripping, and nature gone wild, and all of this, of course, combined with the anarchy and chaos of the dark side of human nature. And when you have these together in this mix presented by Kurosawa and crew, it is a brilliant, volatile masterpiece of cinema that is still effective to this very, very day. And so it's, I think, a great film to watch at any time of the year. It's a great film, therefore, to watch during this time of year, October 2020. But as I say, you can watch it at any time. It still is so chilling and effective, and oh, so Kurosawa. So this is, in English, Throne of Blood, or in Japanese, Kumo no Sujo from 1957. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you once again, as always, for your time, and stay safe, stay well, and cheers.